Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, a Tuesday that feels like a Monday for a lot of people. And if you are lucky enough to be one of them, welcome to September, my friend, which came storming in. And I'm not talking about the weather, thankfully, but the news cycle. Oh my gosh, a lot has happened while you were hopefully enjoying the long holiday weekend. There was a Labor Day edition of the Newsmax Daily, which you likely see on whatever platform you're listening on or at newsmax.com. So if you didn't catch it yesterday, make sure you go back and check that out. A lot of great stuff in there, including portions of the Trump rally in Pennsylvania over the weekend. The first debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Harris is 1 week from tonight. 4 weeks from today is October the 1st, the date of the one and only vice presidential debate between Ohio Senator James David Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. By the way, Buckeyes, thanks for not covering the spread on Saturday. A lot of fantastic college football over the weekend, right? So yesterday, Labor Day, President Joe Biden finally left the beach and spent the holiday on the campaign trail with Vice President Harris in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
We are the greatest manufacturing county in the world, state in the world, city in the world. We're going to remain that way. Eric Dean of the Iron Workers, Tim Driscoll of Bricklayers, April Bell of the SEIU.
They're clapping, but they're not really sure what he was saying. The only thing you can clearly make out there is SEIU. Almost clearly make it out. Service Employees International Union. Let me remind you, this is still our President of the United States, the current leader of the free world. The guy that just a few months ago, Kamala Harris, Chucky Schumer, Gretchen Whitmer, all the Democrats, and most of the media said should be reelected. He was sharp. He was fine. And as bad as that is, there are two sound bites that are making headlines today.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. What's your reaction to the 6 hostages being found dead in Gaza?
Thanks, everybody.
Democratic vice presidential nominee Governor Tim Walz, who served 24 years in the Army National Guard, dodging a question from a reporter about the Israeli-American hostage killed by Hamas over the weekend, completely blowing her off. What's your reaction to the hostage killed by Hamas? Gotta go. Thanks, everybody. And Vice President Harris putting on another fake accent for some reason. I'm not sure what that was supposed to be. If you remember the cartoon character Foghorn Leghorn, I did see some comparisons on X. That is who it sounded more like than anyone else, right? And while they were campaigning, former President Trump was off the campaign trail yesterday, but busy on social media, criticizing Harris on the economy, saying all Americans are suffering during this holiday weekend. High gas prices, transportation costs are up, and grocery prices are through the roof. The Biden-Harris administration and some media were quick to point out that gas prices are lower now than they were last Labor Day. Yeah, but still about $1 higher than they were on Labor Day, let's say 2018, 2019. 20 gallons of gas is an extra $20 if we're talking about a buck, right? 40 gallons maybe for your boat or your RV, an extra 40 gallons, extra $40. And I'll give you some food price information later on because we have a lot to cover here, including what's happening in Israel since the weekend killing of 23-year-old hostage Hirsch Goldberg Poland, an Israeli-American, as I mentioned, and that exchange with Tim Walz, or lack of exchange, his completely unacceptable response, lack of response to that question especially, is a big deal. This is our Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, who covered several stories in this segment that I wanted to get to anyway. Here we go.
Now more than ever, I am super inclined to believe his brother, who's warning everybody not to vote for him, his own brother. I'm also super inclined not to believe, or to believe, the people who actually served with Tim Walz.
Why did you come forward?
It is morally indefensible. He didn't care. It was all about him.
He's a military impersonator.
I don't understand how he could do it,
morally, or you got absolutely no integrity.
The rumor went across the state that he had quit, and it was like, who the hell does that? I mean, it was just unbelievable that a CSM abandoned his troops with 500 soldiers, basically. He's a habitual liar. He lies about everything. He lies about stuff that doesn't make sense.
It shows you the character of Kamala Harris, that she would still pick him for a running mate. Folks, they knew all this stuff when they vetted him. These people have such a disdain for our military. That is why they are trying to everything in their power to pull military support away from Trump. They tried it with the suckers and losers comment. That was proven false by dozens of people that were actually there. They still try to discredit him over his draft deferments, and nobody cares about that. And now they're trying to make it seem like he doesn't respect Arlington National Cemetery. Give me a break. They also want that his campaign got into some physical altercation with Arlington staff. This is such BS, because if they had done that, they would have been arrested immediately. And I know Trump. He wouldn't have anybody on his staff that would do that. This is the same crap they tried when a reporter, remember this back in like 2016, she reached for Corey Lewandowski and he blocked her arm, and then they tried to say he violently assaulted. It's all nonsense. But the left is using its usual liberal mouthpieces to push things. And Tulsi Gabbard, the Democrat, the veteran, she went on CNN and put them back in their place. Watch.
The Army also says that Trump staffers abruptly pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to enforce Arlington's rules prohibiting political activities. Did you witness the altercation at Section 60?
I was there from the beginning with the laying of the wreaths with the family members, and I saw President Trump spending time at the invitation of these Gold Star families with them. He was there for a few hours. I did not see or hear about any kind of altercation until something came out in the news later on.
Good for her. And you would think that the very network peddling this stuff for political gain would at least know when this whole situation happened.
It is very clear that the former president was invited in his personal capacity, as you said, by a family of one of the service members who was killed about 2 years ago during the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago to the day on August 26th.
Yes, 3 years ago.
I mean, the whole point of this event was the 3-year anniversary. You are such a sorry excuse for a journalist, Dana Bash. I just can't with these people anymore. And it didn't stop her from continuing to go after this like a dog with a bone.
The military and also other members of other families who are buried right near there are upset about the campaign filming it and posting the video online. Do you believe that was appropriate?
I checked with the campaign on this question, and they have exchanges with the officials at Arlington Cemetery. They were approved to bring a camera.
Done. End of story, Dana. They have the receipts. It was approved. But notice how she just throws the ambiguous, some other people, some of the other families were upset. Who? Because in all my internet searching, all I could find was the message of support for Trump, defending him against you and your liberal media counterparts. This is why, Dana, people don't like your network. This is despicable.
I'm watching this, and Dana Bash seems unprepared, ill-informed, or, if you want to give her some credit, maybe uncomfortable with the content that her producers handed her. But the whole time I'm watching this, it's a disaster. All I can think of is James Earl Jones. This is CNN. Back to Carl.
Look, Harris, you were at best a subpar VP. Your job was to sit where you're told don't die and try not to make any bad press, and you couldn't even do that. You are way out of line here. But since you went there, I will too. But I think the thing that hit me the hardest was this.
To have a former president there and joining these Gold Star families, I know President Trump wanted to share that with others, especially given the fact that President Biden and Harris, I heard, were invited by some of these family members. They not only didn't come, they didn't even respond to that invitation. And now to have Kamala Harris put this statement out yesterday saying that she stands with these families, she stands with the military and with veterans, You only have to look at the response that came from the Gold Star families of these 13 service members, of how offended they were by that statement, given she has not made any effort, not on that 3rd anniversary or any other time, to call them.
Really? So the families did reach out. Kamala's campaign didn't even respond, neither did the White House. And now, because she thinks she can score some cheap political points, she stands with them. Get lost. Don't stand with anybody. We don't want you. And Biden was lying on a beach somewhere, just like he was for the other 40% of his presidency, on vacation. He wouldn't even return a phone call. I am so sick of these virtue signaling pieces of garbage. These people caused these soldiers' deaths. They caused them. And then they, not Trump, is going to play politics with it? Unbelievable. Can we get some real leadership back in D.C., please?
Navy SEAL Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, 5 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. Don't miss it. Right after the Chris Salcedo Show, who also featured several Gold Star family members.
After years of being ignored, disrespected, and thrown under the bus, the Gold Star families couldn't contain their grief and anger any longer.
Good afternoon. My name is Herman Lopez. I'm a Gold Star father. My son, Corporal Hunter Lopez, was a U.S. Marine killed in action on August 26, 2021. This message is intended for Vice President Kamala Harris. The one thing that I ask of you, and the reason I'm making this message, is for you to stop making comments about your support for the military. As a Gold Star father, I know that you have not supported us. I know that you have not supported other Gold Star families. Please stop making these types of comments, because that support has not been demonstrated. Your words are hollow and empty.
Hollow and empty, just like her rhetoric and her policies and her brain sometimes. Some were less genial than others, but who can blame them after the way the Democrats in and out of the Harris-Biden regime have treated these Gold Star families for the last 3 years?
This is Mark Schmitz, Gold Star father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz. The irony behind your post that you give a rat's ass about our military or our veterans, Jared's brothers and sisters in arms, the rest of the 12, their brothers and sisters in arms, is an outright lie. We're living proof of that. You're despicable. You have zero business running this country. And I pray to God, Americans, wake the hell up and get your ass out of office. You have spit in our face for the last time.
Who do you believe? Gold Star families who have endured unimaginable pain, grief, and abuse at the hands of Democrats? Or do you believe the likes of Kamala Harris and John Bolton? At this point, I should tell you that we had access to the 8 of these families' comments surrounding the Democrats' insane attacks against President Trump, and by extension, the Gold Star families themselves. And where we can't play all of them here, we did on today's Salcedo Storm podcast entitled The Show Behind the Show, Gold Star Families Edition. I wanted there to be an archive of their comments, something that could be heard and shared among our people. I wanted to let the Gold Star families know that I had not forgotten what their kids had done for this country. And I wanted a record of the full depth to which leftists will sink to maintain their unchallenged power over our people. Power they no longer deserve, mind you. Power is all these left-wingers and these Democrats desire, and they're willing to cut right through our own people to get it. I can think of nothing more un-American. Can you?
Chris Salcedo, host of the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax. Absolute mayhem developed in Israel over the weekend, if you weren't paying attention. This is Newsmax Jerusalem correspondent Daniel Cohen, and this may be a little tough to hear because of all the background noise, but it is very, very important.
Frustrations are boiling over from here in Tel Aviv where I'm standing. And let me just tell you, this is a huge protest, one of many that has gone on all day. They're saying, Akshav Iska, in Hebrew, they're saying now, deal. They want a deal right now. These are largely anti-Netanyahu government protesters here, but it's not just that feeling that's going on here in Tel Aviv where there are people trying to make their voices heard, but also in Jerusalem, as you said, a much different and somber scene where the the family is laying murdered American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Poland to rest. Goldberg Poland was one of the 6 more Israeli hostages killed by Hamas just hours before they could be rescued. We have video for you of the procession of family and mourners making their way through the streets of Jerusalem. They were waving Israeli flags, paying their final respects today en route to the cemetery. The 23-year-old had become a symbol of hope during his nearly year-long captivity in Gaza after a Hamas grenade blew off one of his arms on October 7th. Rachel Goldberg Poland, his mother, told mourners today it was a privilege to have Hersh as her son.
Days, amidst the inexplicable agony, terror, anguish, desperation, and fear, we became absolutely certain that you were coming home to us alive. But it was not to be. Now I no longer have to worry about you. I know you are no longer in danger.
Massive protests erupted on Sunday. They continue today. You see where I'm standing right now, a continuation of clashes that have happened between police and demonstrators, both in Tel Aviv and outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. Everyone in Israel is furious over the situation. Everyone. But the country is deeply divided, deeply fractured over who is to blame. The right blame Hamas for the hostage deaths. The left blame Netanyahu.
The people, the 6 hostages that died yesterday, they are part of us, and we could save them, okay? 11 months, they are waiting, they were alive, okay?
Benjamin Netanyahu must wake up to bring them home now, because this is the last chance for them to survive.
In a phone call Sunday, President Biden offered condolences to the parents of Goldberg Poland. President Trump blamed Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's poor leadership for Hersh's death. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke on Sunday as well. He called Hamas terrible, cold-blooded, while reiterating the fact that Israel has agreed to huge concessions in order to try to get the hostages back in Israel. That it's the terrorists, Bianca, who have become intransigent. They've turned down over a dozen hostage deals. They're the ones who are refusing to make a deal. And the tension that you see and the tension that you hear on main streets in Tel Aviv that are completely shut down, and you hear people protesting, that is spilling over. The frustration, the tension has boiled over.
All right, so again, a little difficult to hear Newsmax Jerusalem correspondent Daniel Cohen on the streets of Tel Aviv. Israel says it has made massive concessions to get hostages released. Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials, Qatar officials, all saying Hamas is not willing to negotiate. Well, no kidding. They are ruthless terrorists. Bianca De La Garza spoke about Israel and more with former U.S. Ambassador and former Acting Director of National Intelligence, Ric Grenell.
Ambassador, good to see you today.
Thanks for having me, Bianca. What a day.
Oh, it is incredible. I'm watching the streets there erupting, but I'm also hearing just the heartbreak of the families there. And my heart breaks for everyone. It just seems that we're in this place here where it didn't probably have to be this way. You have hostages killed 48 to 72 hours before their bodies are recovered. And now Harris and Biden are sitting down with a negotiating team. And she goes to Michigan, where you know that Arab community there is a voting bloc that they are desperate to win.
Well, look, let's start from Hersh Goldberg's mom wearing 332, the number on her chest there. And that represents how many days that we've gone in this war without a peace agreement. And I'm somebody who talks about a peace agreement, not a ceasefire, because inherent in the idea of a ceasefire is that the war continues or that the war is going on and we just have a pause. I want to see total peace agreements. And I see in Israel, there's a very healthy democracy and a debate about what to do. What I don't see is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris looking inward because they funded this war. Let's be very clear. The Trump administration, Donald Trump, had squeezed the Iranians. They were bankrupt. They couldn't pursue a nuclear weapon, and they couldn't fund wars. Once the sanctions were dropped, and sanctions and cash and credit were given to the Iranian regime, Then we saw hundreds of billions of dollars given to Iran, and they funded this war.
Exactly. And we're looking at Tel Aviv in the streets there, and compared to what you were just talking about, Donald Trump, the Abraham Accords, Middle East stabilization there, very different contrast here. And I want to play a little bit of Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate in Minnesota State Fair. He's asked about the recovery of 6 bodies of hostages, one an American Israeli. And this is his actual reaction to reporters. It's pretty stunning. I'll play this for our viewers.
What's your reaction to the 6 hostages being found in Gaza?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Walks away with a ice cream or smoothie. Biden's been on the beach. Here we are. You talk about a healthy, democracy, going on here. But at the end of the day, none of this needs to be as where we are today. And I think part of this, too, is where the media may be a bit complicit. CNN headline talking about the American hostage who was executed saying, well, he has died.
All right, I'm going to hold it up right there because I don't want to glance over this, because the CNN headline on its website and on X said the hostage has died. The hostage, 23-year-old Hirsch Goldberg Polin, an Israeli American, was killed, murdered, slaughtered, whatever word you want to use, found in a cave.
This is CNN.
Okay, back to Bianca De La Garza and Ric Grenell.
All of this has sort of led to this, conflict here where we see the pro-Hamas, radical left pressuring, perhaps putting even more pressure on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden not to get things done.
Well, first of all, let's remove the politics for a second and just let me share with you a fact that I learned from being at the UN, the United Nations, for 8 years. Mm-hmm. Every single world crisis requires United States leadership. It doesn't always require United States money or boots on the ground, but it requires us to be a leader. It requires us to go in and bring all of the sides together, to call the meeting, to demand that everybody show up, to enforce some sort of peace agreement. That's what's missing right now from the United States. We do not have an administration that is willing to push hard to find a solution. U.S. leadership is completely gone. And now, if you bring in the politics, all Kamala Harris can think about is Michigan and Pennsylvania. She's concentrating on trying to balance the Arabs in Detroit with the Jews in Philadelphia. And it's really offensive to think about these crises, hostages, and war in terms of blatant politics like that. But that is what she and her advisors are doing. And so you see this back and forth. Someone said to me this morning, the Biden-Harris administration doesn't seem to know what the policy is. And I said, well, they know what the policy is, and the policy is to try to win Michigan and Pennsylvania. So they give one to Michigan, one to Philadelphia. And what happens is it's very confusing for our allies and for Americans.
Exactly. And it's very advantageous for our adversaries, too, looking at a weak leadership here or non-existent who's running the country, and they can take advantage of that. We had the Kremlin spokesman saying Harris is more predictable than Trump. This interview where Dmitry Peskov says, quote, we have no candidate, but of course the Democrats are more predictable. And what Putin said about Biden's predictability applies to almost all Democrats, including Ms. Harris. So they're on the sidelines looking at this, and they know if Donald Trump gets back in the White House, what the future holds, whether it be sanctions or whether it be actually ending some of these conflicts here that started under this administration's watch, Rick.
Look, there's no question that statement is in support of the Harris-Waltz ticket. They would not have said that. The Russians are very careful with their words. They would not have said that unless they wanted Kamala Harris to win. And let's be honest, we Americans know that Kamala Harris is predictable. We know exactly what she's going to do, which is all politics. Say one thing, do another. And so that's what the Russians want. That's what Putin wants. That's what our adversaries want, is they want a U.S. president who can do exactly what they predict the U.S. president to do.
Yep.
And so that's a scary moment because we need unpredictability. We need credibility. Donald Trump is a credible threat, whether it's sanctions or military action or tariffs when Donald Trump says something, it's a credible threat.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Germany and former Acting Director of National Intelligence, Ric Grenell, on Newsmax with Bianca de la Garza, who also spoke with Democratic strategist Theron Bond about Joe Biden's unceremonious exit from the race, passing the torch to Kamala Harris.
And I know it was Clooney who, kind of was on that, very famous picture there. It was like Julia Roberts and Obama and Biden, and they were at that big fundraiser. And then all of a sudden, you're not friends with Joe. I mean, that's the real reality, Theron. And it's one now that people are saying, why didn't Kamala also tell us? And we know it didn't come up, and she didn't really give an answer. But what did she know? When did she know it about Biden's cognitive decline? I think that's a real valid question that Americans still need an answer to. You. We've got 30 seconds here.
It is. I think you would like to know. I would like to know. I think the American people would like to know, because could we have gotten to this space where President Joe Biden stepped aside a lot sooner? Probably so, but more people were concerned with protecting the president versus protecting the American people. And that's the biggest problem that I have, that the American people should have been at the forefront of decision making across the board.
Democratic strategist Theron Bond on Newsmax. And I know this may get a little long here, but I cannot pass up this Labor Day message from the great Joe Pinion filling in for Rob Schmidt last night. And Rob, I remember, worked on Christmas, so he certainly deserved to be off on Labor Day.
The dignity of work, the fruit of one's labor. Embedded in those words is the distilled essence of the American dream, the DNA of the American spirit. That you get out of life what you put into it. That those who work hard are rewarded. And that at the end of all of that laboring, your children will be better off than you were because of what you leave behind, a uniquely American inheritance. See, Labor Day here in America, it is about honoring that legacy, honoring the unseen workers that cemented America as an unrivaled global economic power. Remembering those who toiled without a minimum wage, without workforce safety standards, without the unions to ensure their rightful pay. And ensuring that the next generation of American workers always receive the dignity that they deserve. See, that is the sentiment you heard from politicians and public figures alike across the political spectrum every year. And it is kind of what you heard from Governor Tim Walz and the Democrats this past Labor Day as well. Quote, Kamala Harris and I stand on the side of American workers. But here's the thing, folks. You see, what the left has forgotten is that it's not just about what you make. It's also about what you get to keep. See, what's left when the work is done also matters. When the bills are paid. What's the bank balance after the taxes have been levied? What remains of that American inheritance? And 3.5 years of Bidenomics later, the answer to that question is, well, not much. And the only people who don't seem to realize that they are asking for 4 more years in power are the people who have put us in this mess.
When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world.
You see, from the day that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took the oath of office to present, inflation has outpaced real wages paid to real Americans. That is not a success story. That is a colossal failure documented in the data provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Is it all Joe Biden's fault? No, it is not. Is it all Kamala Harris's fault? No, it is not. But you cannot solve a problem if you refuse to acknowledge that the problem exists. And not only does Kamala Harris seem oblivious to the fact that her actions as vice president helped pour gasoline on America's wildfire of inflation, well, her choice for running mate can't seem to stop bragging about it.
Vice President Harris was the deciding vote on the American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, see, turns out their life preserver for America was an anchor that dragged many middle-class Americans into a financial abyss.
That is Newsmax host Joe Pinion. Kamala Harris is campaigning in Wisconsin today. Trump has a rally there on Saturday. Team Trump has an event in Georgia today featuring Florida Senator Rick Scott, former Small Business Administrator Linda McMahon, and others. And there's also a Trump event with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and some others in Mesa, Arizona today as well. Wall Street starting off the new month in the red this morning after being closed for the holiday yesterday. The big focus is the big jobs report coming up this Friday, the non-farm payroll report, first Friday of every month, remember, and it's especially important this month with the Fed ready to finally cut interest rates. There's going to be a lot of talk and attention paid to that. Oh, and I said I would tell you about food, right? A new nationwide grocery price index shows if you live in Hawaii, which is not really a surprise, but Vermont or Oklahoma, you're paying 2% more for groceries than the rest of the nation. And the country as a whole is paying nearly 3% more for everything than we were a year ago. So yeah, inflation is down to 2.9%, but that's 2.9% more than what we were paying a year ago. Keep up with all of the news all day long on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com. And be sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus for all of your favorite shows, hosts, guests, documentaries, and much more. Newsmaxplus.com. Go there and get signed up. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you so much for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your day. If nothing else, I guess it's at least Taco Tuesday, right? And keep on fighting the good fight.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.